thanks for joining us on our virtual field trip to China made possible with the generous support of Lowe's. Today we're going across the world to visit a part of China where giant pandas roam alongside many other amazing animals like golden monkeys and something called a takin. China is the third largest country in the world and is about the same size as the United States. China is home to 1.3 billion people. And while China has some very large cities like Beijing and Shanghai, about half the people there live in rural areas. China has a wide range of geography, including deserts, mountains, forests, and grasslands. About 1/3 of China's land area is mountainous. You may have heard of Mount Everest, which sits on the border between China and Nepal. China is home to over 6,000 different species of vertebrates. That's a name for animals with a spine. And over 600 of those vertebrates, including the giant panda, are found only in China. China is a rapidly growing country, and as its population grows, some of these animals face challenges as their habitat is impacted by development. Now today we're going to explore 2 provinces of China and take a closer look at the animals like the giant panda who live there. We'll also look at the efforts to protect their habitat through reforestation and land reserves, and we'll learn how protecting natural areas like forests can help us combat climate change. Now today we have scientist Yue Wang from the Yunnan province in China joining us. Yue, thanks for being our expert guide today. You've studied these forests for years, right?
Yes, I'm happy to be here. I have been fascinated by forests for a long time. When I was a kid, I always thought plants had a magical power. I watched a Japanese cartoon called Flower Angel. It's a story about a very brave girl who had a magical flower-shaped key that she could point at a flower, get special powers. It's a fairy tale, but it's the beginning of my love of nature. My interest in nature led me to study forestry for both my undergraduate and graduate degrees. I really enjoy working in mountainous areas with huge trees and rivers. One of my favorite places to hike in Yunnan, where I'm from, is Baima Snow Mountain. Because I love outdoors so much, you could say my work with Nature Conservancy is my dream job.
That's excellent. I can't wait to learn more about the work that you do at the Nature Conservancy. And I'm also looking forward to learning about the amazing natural areas in China. But before we get started, let's say hello to the students of White Oak Middle School who are joining us live from their classroom in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Hi.
So now let's take off to China by looking at the wide variety of landscapes and historical treasures you can find in this awesome country. you can see, China is a vast and varied land with a ton of biodiversity and some really gorgeous features. So let's take a closer look. Yue, can you tell us more about the areas we're going to be visiting today?
Sure, we are visiting two provinces in China, Sichuan and Yunnan. These provinces are in southwestern China, are right next to each other. Together, they are home to over 130 million people.
Now listen, I know I could use a little help with this. Yue, can you show us how to pronounce the names of these places and also show us how they're written in Chinese?
Sure. The word Sichuan in Chinese is made of two characters. The first character means four, and the second character means rivers. It has this name because many rivers run through the province. In Sichuan, you will find an amazing park called Jiuzhaigou, which has beautiful clear blue lakes and cascading waterfalls. Sichuan province is home to Laohegou Reserve, which is run by the Nature Conservancy and our partners. I will tell you more about it later. Sichuan is one of the few places in China where you will find pandas. Chengdu is the largest city in this province and is home to over 4 million people.
4 million people. To give everyone an idea, this is about the population of Los Angeles, California. The states of Kentucky, Oregon, and Oklahoma are each also home to about 4 million people. Sichuan sounds like an amazing place to visit. Now, Yue, the other province we're going to be visiting is right next to Sichuan. Is that right?
Yes, the other province we are visiting, Yunnan, is written like this in Chinese. And the first character means cloud, and the second character means south. It means south of the cloud mountains, and it gets this name because there are so many mountain ranges in this area. In Yunnan, there are many beautiful karst formations that look like weird mountain rock. These are formed when limestone rock beneath the landscape erodes away and leaves behind these amazing towers. Here, you will find also snake-capped mountain like Meili Snow Mountain, which is almost 20,000 feet tall, vast forest, giant gorges, old cities like Lijiang, and fertile agricultural lands like this tourist rice field.
Awesome. So today within these two areas, we're going to focus on one of the two features that they both have, the spectacular forests. Yue, help us understand a bit more about the importance of forests. I know there are a lot of cool animals there, but the forests here are important for both people and animals, right?
You're right, Tyler. The forests here provide animals with food, shelter, and places to play and hide. Forests also need these animals. They help the forest grow and regenerate. And of course, people benefit from forests too. We get food, timber, fiber, and medicine from forests. We also live on clean water that comes from the mountains and clear air generated from the plant leaves. China is made up of a lot of rural areas, and these people depend heavily on the forests.
So to help us understand the role of forests even more, let's look at some of the remarkable things that trees and other plants are able to do. I have a question for all of you out there watching this. See this log I'm holding here? It came from a tree, and it's pretty heavy. We can call that heaviness mass. Now, we sort of think about this log as the body of the tree, right? So if you're a human or another animal, you've got to eat lots and lots of food to get the nutrients to build your body. And that food might come from salads or pasta or hamburgers or sandwiches or whatever. But here's my question for all of you. Where did the tree get most of the food that it needed to make this wood to build its body? Okay, you got 4 choices. Where did the tree get the food it needed to build its body? Did the food come from the dirt, the water, the air, or the sun? Now, believe it or not, a tree's mass, this wood, actually comes mostly from gas in the air around us. And this gas is carbon dioxide. Now, to sound like a scientist, you could call carbon dioxide by another name, CO2. CO2 is a chemical formula for carbon dioxide. It's a compound made of one atom of carbon attached to two atoms of oxygen. And carbon dioxide comes from a lot of different sources. In fact, humans breathe out carbon dioxide, and plants need that carbon dioxide to grow. Plants have this amazing ability to take in carbon dioxide right out of the air and turn that carbon dioxide in the air into solid wood. Isn't that amazing? Think about that the next time you see a piece of wood. It was made from breath. It was made from somebody's breath right out of the air. So to understand the role of forests, you really got to understand something called the carbon cycle. So let's take a look at this video. Pay attention, because there might be a quiz at the end.
Carbon. This chemical element is the basis of all known life, and it's everywhere. It's in our clothes, our food, it's in this cute red panda. Carbon is also in the fuels that power our lives, whether it's gasoline for getting around or wood for cooking. But when burned, these fuels release its carbon into the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Enter the carbon cycle, nature's way of moving carbon around and balancing life on this planet. Quick example, we and other animals exhale carbon dioxide, or CO2. Trees eat that and store the carbon. That's called carbon sequestration. The trees then produce oxygen. We can breathe again. Carbon cycle. Nice.
Now, remember the log and how we talked about plants getting carbon dioxide from humans and the air that we breathe out? Well, the video we just watched mentioned another way that carbon dioxide can be created. So here's my question. Is it true or false that carbon dioxide can be created by burning fossil fuels? Let's go to our friends at White Oak Middle School to tell us the correct answer.
Yes, it is true. Because in the video, it also talks about carbon dioxide coming from burning fossil fuels, like gasoline. Burning wood can create carbon dioxide, so it's not just us breathing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks so much for your help. Now here's another question. This is a little bit trickier. Do you remember hearing that term carbon sequestration in the video? This term sounds pretty complex, but it's not that complicated. So true or false, carbon sequestration means to push out or release carbon in the form of carbon dioxide. Well, I told you this one was tricky. It's actually false. Carbon sequestration means pulling in carbon, not pushing it out. So remember that. Carbon sequestration is when trees and plants are pulling in carbon dioxide and then storing it as mass, like wood, leaves, and other plant parts. So you're all junior scientists now, learning terms like carbon sequestration. Nice work. But now let's dig deeper. Why are forests so important beyond the immediate benefits to humans, and how do they relate to climate change, Yue?
Just like the video said, carbon dioxide or CO2 get created when we burn wood and burn fossil fuel like gasoline, diesel, or natural gas. Today, we generate much more CO2 than we ever have before. The amount of CO2 and other gases in the atmosphere is much higher than it would be naturally.
So is this a problem? What's the matter with having more CO2 in the atmosphere?
Well, the problem is this actual CO2 is causing our climate to warm. This is called the greenhouse effect. If you have ever been to a greenhouse, you know that it can be really warm inside, even in the middle of the winter. Tyler, do you know how a greenhouse stays warm?
Yeah, I think I do. So greenhouses are usually made with a lot of glass or plastic. And so the solar energy from the sun can shine in through the glass, but then the heat can't get back out.
Exactly. And the more CO2 is making our atmosphere more and more like the roof of a greenhouse. And that's a problem. Normally, solar energy or heat from the sun warms the Earth's surface. That's why it's warm when you're standing in the sun. Then heat is back out of the atmosphere towards space. But when there are increased level of gases called greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, These gases can act like the glass on a greenhouse and trap the sun heat in the Earth's atmosphere.
Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, so increased levels of carbon dioxide can eventually cause the Earth's temperature to warm. Even a few degrees of temperature change could have a big effect on the Earth. So, what are the ways that we can reduce the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere to help prevent the greenhouse effect?
For one, forests are really important in helping to reduce greenhouse gases. As we have talked about, pollutants are generated from cars, factories, power plants, and buildings. These pollutants contain greenhouse gases. The good thing is the forest can absorb carbon dioxide from the air and store it in its organic matter, like its leaves, stems, branches, and the trunks of the trees. The carbon stays sequestered here until the tree dies, and the carbon is released back into the system. Luckily, forests store more carbon than they release.
So forests help reduce greenhouse gas effects and global climate change by taking in carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen in the air. Now, are there other things that take in the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere?
Yes. For example, the ocean can take in some carbon dioxide, but the ocean cannot absorb all of it because it can have a harmful effect on things like corals and other sea life.
I get it. So you're saying we can't control the ocean or rely on it to do all the work for us. But there is a way to help. We can plant trees because they pull in carbon dioxide. Now this seems like something that we should be doing all around the world if we want to store lots of carbon dioxide in trees. Is that right?
That's right. We now have 7 billion people in the world, which is 2 times more than 50 years ago. And we expect to have 10 million by 2050. To feed and provide housing for all these people, we had to convert a lot of forests to cities and farms. When trees are cut down and make room for more farms, cities, and other human uses, this is called deforestation. Deforestation is happening in many places, not just in China.
Now, Yue, we know that reforestation and protection of existing forests has to happen. I know this is something that I think about. I want to make sure that our next generation and the generations after that can enjoy the same services from forests as we do. We shouldn't just use forests, but we should also restore them and save them for the future. But how do we do this?
This job belongs to everyone in our society. We need forests to regulate climates and provide services such as food, water, timber, and clear air in a sustainable way. We also use forests for fun, like exploring, or like me, I love hiking in the forest. People should also try to reduce their use of wood, fiber, and other energy. We all have to do our part to make sure we have forests for generations to come.
Okay, so now we get to talk about one of my favorite things, the animals in those amazing forests in Sichuan and Yunnan provinces. We know that there are a lot of cool animals among those trees in China. The giant panda is one of them. I can't wait to learn about more. So now I have a question for you. I've heard that they call giant pandas living fossils. Is this true?
Yes, we call giant panda a living fossil because any of other animals that first lived during the same time as the panda a million years ago are now extinct. We can only find these animals as fossils, but the panda has evolved and survived. Even though we have studied pandas for decades, we still know very little about them. Due to the loss of habitat, this animal is facing its greatest challenge ever. There are only about 2,000 pandas left in the wild and another 3,000 living in captivity like zoos. The Nature Conservancy has preserved nearly 50 square miles of panda habitat in Sichuan, next to 2 other big national panda reserves. This is important because reserve connects with these other protected lands and makes the panda habitat even bigger. They have more room to roam. The Laohego Reserve has an estimated population of 10 pandas. We have rangers who patrol the reserve to protect these pandas from people who want to hunt them. Our scientists also set up infrared cameras so we can monitor and learn about the pandas.
I love watching those giant pandas. Now, I've seen them in zoos before, but I've never seen them so up close and personal in the wild. It's really cool to see what pandas are up to when there's no one around. Now, I know there are other animals in those forests too. What else can we find sharing the forest with the giant pandas?
Like the panda, the golden monkey is also one of China's national treasures. There are only 5 species of them in the world, and they all can be found in China. The Sichuan golden monkey lives in the same habitat as the panda. They spend most of their time in trees. The monkey does not like really hot weather, but it can survive in really cold temperature. They live in family groups of up to 600, which is really unusual for primates.
Well, that's a big family. I can't imagine living with 600 people in one group. What other animals can we find?
There is another animal called the red panda. They are about the size of a typical house cat, and there are less than 10,000 in the wild. You can only find these animals in the Himalaya and this area of China. Like pandas, they eat bamboo.
I know a cool fact about the red panda. The name is a bit deceiving because they aren't actually pandas at all. They're more closely related to raccoons and skunks. So I've got another animal I want to ask you about. I've seen pictures of an animal from China that looks like a cross between a goat and an antelope. What is this thing?
This is a really neat animal, but hard to find. It's called takin, and it does kind of look like a goat. This makes sense because they are in the same family as the goats, sheep, and the muskox. They travel in small groups high up in the mountains. Remember how I said we have cameras that record what pandas do? We have a photograph of a panda eating a dead takin, which is proof that panda eat more than just the bamboo. Remember, it's all part of that circle of life and the survival for the animals.
Pandas eat meat. Did you all know that? So yes, they eat a lot of bamboo and they'll climb really high up in the trees to eat it, but their diet also has a little bit of meat in it. There's so many cool animals. What else do you have for us, Yue?
In Yunnan, there is a relative of a Sichuan golden monkey called the Yunnan snub-nosed monkey, and it's one of the most endangered primates on Earth. There are fewer than 2,000 of them in the wild. Many of these animals are threatened by loss of habitat and their trees. In fact, all these animals I have just told you about are threatened or endangered. Because their habitats are becoming smaller, it's just another reason trees are so important.
These animals are also special and rare. I don't think anyone wants to see them disappear. So we have to protect these areas and these forests. We know that it's a balance because humans still rely on forests for so many resources, and it's an ongoing challenge. So how can we still benefit from forests while also protecting the animals that live there?
It's easy to think about these forests are ours, but we have to look at a bigger picture. Forests have many purposes. Yes, they provide us resources, but they also provide a spot for birds to nest. Bamboo provides food for giant pandas. Forest canopy provide home for many animals. In order to protect these animals' habitat, we have to do some reforestation. Reforestation means to replace the trees that have been cut down.
So it sounds like reforestation is good for everyone, for us and for the animals, right?
Absolutely. Many of these animals have had a huge loss in population because of habitat loss. We have to add trees back to this forest, connect existing reserves, and provide buffers to protect the reserve from human activity. It's not only for the health of the animals, but it improves our health as well.
Right, I'm remembering back to the video, and we need those forests to help take care of the carbon dioxide we're putting into the air. If we all do our part, it can even help to slow down climate change. Okay, so let's take a couple questions here. Here's one for you, Yue. Which animals have been affected most by deforestation in China?
Well, in China, we have about 600 species of endangered animals. They are threatened by different kind of reasons. The South China tiger is probably the one that has been affected the most. We almost cannot find them in the wild now.
That's so sad. Our world needs tigers. Here's another question for our students. When we are restoring forests, do we plant just one kind of tree, or do we plant many different kinds?
This is really a good question. We definitely want to plant multiple species of trees. With the multiple species, forests can be stronger, knocking back bugs and disease.
So, Yue, before we get to some more questions, can you tell us about some of the work that the Nature Conservancy is doing in China to help with reforestation and to protect some of these critical habitats?
Yes, we did almost 42 square miles of forest restoration around the nature reserves. This will give the animals and their habitat even more room to roam.
So we're seeing some images from your project in China here. Can you tell us what's happening in these pictures?
This is taking place in Sichuan province. You can see local people planting trees to help restore lands in their communities. As the new forests grow, wildlife can use them for more habitat.
So how are the people benefiting from the trees?
The communities living around here will be paid for managing the land and preserving the forest. At the same time, they still can use the forest to get other things that they need. For example, they can take the leaves of the trees for composting, which will be cheap fertilizer.
So what kind of trees are being planted?
The people are planting different types of trees, including fir, spruce, pine, elder, and cypress. You can find similar species to these trees in the United States.
So it sounds like there's some protected lands in China, like the reserve that you talked about earlier. Aren't these reserves helping to protect animals and their habitats? Like, why are there still endangered animals?
Yes, we do have protected areas, but they are not enough. And those protected areas are very fragmented. When the land is fragmented, there are only small areas being protected at a time. There is a lot of human development in between. Animals need more space than this. Also, the area we have restored are not enough to support all the people living on this planet, and the population is only getting bigger. We need to restore much more for the future.
Now let's take a moment and see some of the questions that we've gotten from our audience. Yue, here's one from a student by the name of Angie. And the question is, what is the temperature in various parts of the ecosystems that we're talking about? Are these hot areas? Are they cold areas?
I would say it's a kind of a mild temperature in southern China, southwest of China. It's not very too cold in the winter, and it's not very too warm in the summer.
All right. So here's another one from Tara. And the question is, how do you say panda in the Mandarin or Chinese language?
熊猫, that's panda in Chinese, 熊猫.
Here's a question from Tiffany. What is the rarest animal in China?
I would say gibbons.
Oh, gibbons.
Yeah, gibbons is one of the rarest species in China.
Do you have a sense of how many there are?
Oh, well, the most rarest one I know is only have a dozen of them left in the wild.
Oh, wow. That is tiny. That's really sad. So here's another question from Colette. What are the most common trees in the forests in China?
Because China is very big, from north to south, we have different ecosystem. So the trees from the south to north are different from each other. I would say probably pine trees are the most common species you can find both in South and North China.
Okay. Mrs. Smith's third grade class in Wisconsin wants to know, what time is it in China right now?
Well, it's about 13 hours time difference between Eastern US time to Beijing time. So now it's about 1 a.m. in the morning, China time.
Wow, the middle of the night over there.
Yeah, they're sleeping.
So let's go back now and talk a little bit more about what's happening in China. with conservation and with deforestation. Is this similar to what's going on here in the United States?
It might not seem like it, but what happens in one part of the world does affect another part. Plus, we can learn so much from each other. These are not just the issue in China. There are issues everywhere. Communities all over the world are developing, and animals are seeing their habitat become smaller and smaller. Deforestation does not just happen because people at the local level need trees. Our world is more connected than ever. That is called globalization. And because of that, forests are cut down in places like Amazon, not just for people who live there, but to meet the need of the people around the world. So you can start to see how issues like climate change and deforestation are not just the responsibility of one group of people. They are global challenges.
So how can students help with this issue in their own communities? Let's hear about an example of what you can do from one of our students at White Oak Middle School.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. At our middle school, we went to outdoor ed and collected nuts from the local forest and bagged them and sent them to a local nursery where they would grow them and put them around the Potomac to prevent erosion and to keep the streams cooler. This also provided homes and food for the native animals.
What do you think about that, Yue?
Nice job. It's great to hear that you are doing reforestation. Now for others out there, one easy thing you can do is to reduce the use of paper. You can also recycle more. This way, we don't need to cut down as many trees. And like we learned, these trees can help reduce climate change by decreasing carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
I have a couple of other ideas. You can also plant trees in your cities and neighborhoods to provide habitat for animals. Even if you live in a city, a few trees can create homes for animals right there where you live. This helps to clean our air in our cities and helps as well by storing carbon dioxide. Now, you can also be a conservation ambassador in your neighborhood. Tell people why it's important to plant and care for trees.
Those are great ideas, Tyler. You can do a lot by planting flowers, trees, and shrubs in your own neighborhood.
It sounds like there's a lot that we can do in our own lives to make a difference. Yue, thanks so much for joining us today. I know I learned a ton from you, and this has been a really fun virtual field trip. And thank you for all that you do in China and for promoting reforestation all around the world.
Thank you for having me. I love what I do, and I hope it inspires other people, not just in China, but also around the world, to make some changes to help the environment and keep the nature strong.
So a big thank you to all the students and the teachers who tuned in, and a special shout out to the students at White Oak Middle School for sharing their experiences. Thank you so much. Now, even though you might live far away from China, conserving habitat and encouraging reforestation is important all across the world. Tell your parents, family, and friends about the importance of trees. See if there are any tree planting initiatives in your own city, and if there aren't, start your own. You can make a difference by taking small steps. Now, thanks again to Lowe's for providing generous support for today's virtual field trip, and thanks to all of you for tuning in.